Hey, friends. That's enough of that madness. I've been listening to drum and bass for 3 hours. We'll see if that gets us demonetized. Hello, friends. Hello. Jingling. We coming through? Yes, we're coming through. Bone. Hey there, friends. This is David Lightbringer, and we've got an interesting program today. This is going to be a scripted live stream. It's going to be one of those... this was going to be a produced video about the Pact of Ice and Fire. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of art about the events that I need to talk about, and although I considered doing the entire video with just one picture of Jaecerys and like having a 26-minute slow zoom in, it seemed funny, decided not to do that. So we're just going to present it live. So here's what we're doing. We're going to keep this under an hour. It's going to be scripted. I'm not going to stop and take questions during the stream. If you want to use the super chat to support the program or just highlight your message for the rest of the chat, that is totally cool. The chat is up on the screen for people watching on the replay, so fame can be yours. I'll take a few minutes to take questions at the very end, but we're going to be doing a day after Christmas stream on Monday where we'll do a big discussion about this new theory that I'm going to throw at you today, because it's not just the Pact of Ice and Fire. I stumbled upon something in the crypts, a new theory about the crypts. So I'll give you that towards the end of the script today, and then on Monday we'll do a big dragons and Winterfell discussion, everything having to do with dragons and Winterfell. There's a few theories floating around, so that'll be a fun Christmas stream to do on Monday. So today, like I said, we are going to rip through this script, and it's I'm really excited to present it to you. I just, like I said, didn't have enough art to do the normal video thing, and so here we are. Plus, I mixed you guys. Oh yeah, I guess I should tell you. Let's give a little credit where credit was due. That Sleigh Bells remix is Outline and Accolade Sleigh Bells D&B remix, and our art on the screen. You can see Cregan Stark. The very handsome Jaecerys of Velaryon. That's how he appears in the show. That's right. That's him. And then on the right would be Jaecerys, Velaryon, and Sarah Snow by art by Val. And we will get to what that's about in a minute. Yeah, no, that's how he looked on the show. His hair is great. I don't know what you mean. He's got fantastic hair, that Jaecerys Velaryon. He's I guess he's Targaryen, isn't he? Well, no, he's Velaryon. That's right. He'll be Targaryen when he takes the throne, but he's Velaryon until then. Well, whatever. I may have called him Targaryen in the script. So I did start with, and yes, bonus points if you comment that I am increasingly looking like Fabian Frankel here as my hair grows out. It's the way to my heart here. I did start the stream with no glasses on, just so you know that I'm not the Corinthian. I do have eyeballs, but when I read the script, I use the glasses so it doesn't look like I'm reading, and I can simulate as if I was just brainstorming this whole thing. You know, that's the idea. So here we go, friends. Here we go. What was that song called? One more time. That was Sleigh Bells, but you want to look for the artist, Outline and Accolade. Outline X Accolade. That will get you the Sleigh Bells remix. I guess I'll just drop it in the chat real quick here. Hang on. I'll put it in the description too. Like I said, hopefully that doesn't get demonetized or I have to chop the first couple minutes off. But there we go. Yeah, Christian Cole. That's the idea. He looks like me though. I'm older than him. So, you know. Anyways, we do appreciate you all gracing us with your presence. It's very much appreciated. I do it for the love of the people, you know, so here we are. It's nice to be together on the holidays. So yes, lovely crowd that we have here. So guys, now that we know that Aegon the Conqueror conquered Westeros based on a dream that he had about the end of the world, well, our eyes are turned to something called the Pact of Ice and Fire, because Aegon called his dream the Song of Ice and Fire. And so, perhaps the Pact of Ice and Fire has something to do with Aegon's prophecy, you know? This is really one of the first things that people thought of when we heard about the the Song of Ice and Fire, Aegon's dream being given that name. And of course, the Pact of Ice and Fire, it's an agreement of sorts between House Stark and House Targaryen. So, what is it? Well, the main question here is, were the Targaryens and Starks signing this pact, discussing Aegon's prophecy when they made their agreement? Because, of course, it was probably the case that Torrhen Stark agreed, when he agreed to kneel to Aegon, that they discussed the prophecy, and it's very likely that Lyanna and Rhaegar discussed the prophecy. So, oh yes, of course, there's Alaric, Fly Alaric Stark and Alysanne. We know they shared all their secrets by candlelight in the Winterfell library in 58 AC. But today we're going to answer the question, ask and answer, we'll do both. What exactly happened in Winterfell when Torrhen Stark and Prince Jaecerys Targaryen signed the Pact of Ice and Fire? Oh, and I said Cregan Stark by Olenna Art, right? I just want to make sure I said that. Okay, very good. Suddenly had a, oh my gosh, I skipped that one. There we go. It's not much Cregan Art, so I've got to give credit where credit is due. We'll also, like I said, talk about this whole deal about dragon's eggs in the crypts of Winterfell. And this will be a spoiler stream, by the way. We're going to talk about Fire and Blood events that we will see on Season 2 of House of the Dragon. So if you want to stay completely spoiler-free of House of the Dragon, then this isn't the stream for you. I'm not going to spoil the whole thing, but we will talk about, Jaecerys and things that he's going to do and stuff like that. So just a heads up. So friends, at the end of Season 1 of House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra sent her two eldest sons, Jaecerys and Lucerys, of course, to her two most important potential allies. Luke went south to Storm's End, and Lord Boros Baratheon, which, well, we know how that turned out. So Jace, he was sent north, if you remember, on what was perceived to be the more difficult mission, but which actually turned out to be the much safer of the two, in that Jace didn't get eaten by a dragon. So Jace was sent to the north, to Winterfell chiefly, but also to White Harbor and the Three Sisters on the way there, as well as the Eyrie, which was ruled by Lady Jane Arryn of the Vale. Now, Jace seems to have performed well as an emissary at all locations, and according to Mushroom, Jace performed services of a different kind to win the allegiance of Lady Jane. The Lord's Kiss, I believe Ygritte called it in that cave with Jon Snow. All right. But guys, this seems like pure fabrication. I mean, there's just no chance that the son of Harwin Strong and Rhaenyra Targaryen, Rhaenyra, the most beautiful princess in the world, and Harwin Strong, the strongest man in the world, would be the kind of person to... All right. As they say, all right. Vile rumors from Mushroom, of course. In any case, it's the Winterfell leg of the trip here that we want to discuss, right? But I just wanted to give you the backdrop for Jace's arrival there. By the time that he gets there, he hasn't fought in war, but he will have flown his dragon to the Eyrie, to the Three Sisters, to White Harbor, and now he's landed his dragon in the snow in Winterfell. That's a Sarah Snow joke. You'll get it in a second. Yeah, so he's not quite as green as when he set out from Dragonstone, right? So with Rhaenyra having been crowned on Dragonstone before he left, Prince Jaecerys is now Crown Prince Jaecerys. He's the heir to the Iron Throne. If Rhaenyra can win the war, of course, and a lot of that actually depends on Jace being able to secure the allegiance of Winterfell for Rhaenyra's side, who are, of course, called the Blacks, and that has nothing to do with the Velaryons being black. It's just a strange coincidence, but yeah, there it is. So, one second. Yes, and happy Festivus. Happy Festivus. So the Lord of Winterfell at that time is one of the most famous historical Starks. He's right up there with Torrhen Stark, the king who knelt, and Brandon Ice Eyes Stark, who retook the Wolf's Den. And that, of course, would be Lord Cregan Stark. You can see below me right here. He eventually will become known as the Old Man of the North. However, he's only 21 at this time, which means he's not a whole lot older than Jace. Jace is 14 in the books. It seems maybe a little older on the show. Hard to say, but Cregan's only 21, so they're not too far apart. And actually, interesting story about Cregan. He's been the Lord of Winterfell since the age of 13. But his father, Rickon, died early. And then he had one of those evil uncle figures, a grasping uncle who was a regent, but then wouldn't give up the throne. So at 16, Cregan had to throw his ass in the dungeon in order to take control of Winterfell. And I've wondered if maybe this is a reason why Cregan might sympathize with Rhaenyra being usurped by a younger sibling, by Otto and stuff like that. It may see a similar, thing there or whatever. But the main thing is that it's recorded that Jace and Cregan took a liking to one another, with Jaecerys reminding Cregan of his younger brother, who had died 10 years earlier. And apparently a lot of people die prematurely in the north. It's that kind of savage environment. So the end result of the visit is that the Pact of Ice and Fire is struck. And despite the grandiose name, the Pact of Ice and Fire is really just a marriage pact to seal the allegiance of House Stark to Rhaenyra's branch of House Targaryen. So Jace, of course, on the show, he was betrothed to Baela more recently. In the books, he's been betrothed since, a very early age. But the point is, Jace is not free to marry any Starks to seal a marriage pact. So instead, Rhaenyra and Jaecerys pledged to betroth Jace's first daughter, whenever she's born, to Cregan's firstborn son, Rickon, who is named after Cregan's dad. And Rickon was 1 at this time. So basically, Jace, again, when he has a daughter, they will betroth her to, Rickon. So then the future Lord of Winterfell will be Rickon Stark, and he'd have a Targaryen wife, be Jace's daughter. So this wedding, had it ever occurred, shout out Run DMC, would have been the first union of Stark and Targaryen in recorded history. But alas, and again, spoiler alert, the war intervened and Jace never gave birth to that daughter. So it wasn't actually until some 150 years later that Stark and Targaryen finally mingled their bloodlines to produce the prince that was promised. And that's Rhaegar and Lyanna, of course. And the fact that such a person as Jon Snow was the result of this long-promised Stark-Targaryen union is basically what's so interesting about this Pact of Ice and Fire. So that brings us back to the opening question. Was this marriage pact given the name the Pact of Ice and Fire because it actually had something to do with Aegon's prophecy, which is the Song of Ice and Fire? Or did they just think of that name independently on their own and it had nothing to do with Aegon's prophecy? That would be weird, because we know that it's passed down, through the Targaryen line. So Rhaenyra knows, and she should have told Jace, but I'll get to that in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself on the script. I'm freelancing. So that brings us back to the opening question, right? Was this marriage pact... Oh, I just read that. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Yeah, it's a script, like I said. So according to the rules of the show, Rhaenyra should have told Jace about Aegon's prophecy when she was crowned, if not before. And although we don't know what the rules are in the book canon about who is told, it actually seems like a lot more Targaryens know in the books, more than just the heir. So it's likely that Jace would have taken that knowledge with him to Winterfell. And even though we don't see that happen on the show, it's easily something they could refer to later as having happened off screen. So I don't really think that's a big deal. And really the big question here is, did Rhaenyra instruct Jaecerys to bring up Aegon's prophecy in his discussions with Cregan? Okay, if Aegon and Torrhen had formed an understanding and an agreement based on Aegon's prophecy 130 years earlier, then Rhaenyra may have thought that she could do the same thing, right? And that, she might even be thinking that the Starks would still know about Torrhen and Aegon making this agreement based on the prophecy on their side. It's only 130 years earlier, so something that she could, play on if potentially Cregan knows about this history, which I suspect that he would, but I want everything to line up. I'm making a theory, so don't trust me. Yeah. In any case, this would make a lot of sense, and it would make a nice poetic symmetry, right? The Starks and Targaryens, they make this pact of ice and fire to join their bloodlines, and even though it doesn't come through at the time, when it does come through, it leads to the prince that was promised, or at least one, if Dany and Jon are both, it leads to Jon is the point. And of course, the prince that was promised, his song is the Song of Ice and Fire. So Rhaegar and Lyanna are essentially a very delayed fulfillment of the Pact of Ice and Fire. So you can see how this all kind of lines up. Now, oddly enough, it seems that Mushroom, who again lived 150 years before Rhaegar and Lyanna, nevertheless wrote himself a little R+L=J fan fiction and slapped the names Jaecerys Targaryen and Sarah Snow on top of it. And I'm kidding, but I'm kind of not. So listen to this quote and tell me if George didn't write this as some kind of parallel to whatever the truth of Rhaegar and Lyanna's elopement, as I like to call it, turns out to be. So it says, Mushroom's account introduces a young maiden, or wolf girl as he dubs her, with the name of Sarah Snow. So smitten was Prince Jaecerys with this creature, a bastard daughter of the late Lord Cregan Stark, and that's Cregan's father, that he lay with her of a night. On learning that his guest had claimed the maidenhead of his bastard sister, Lord Cregan became most wroth, and only softened when Sarah Snow told him that the prince had taken her for his wife. They had spoken their vows in Winterfell's own godswood before Hearttree, and only then had she given herself to him, wrapped in furs amidst the snows, as the old gods looked on. So it's a very romantic passage there. Right, and we know those old gods do like to look on, don't they? Yes, before Pornhub there was Porn Shrub. Picture the weirwood tree as a porn shrub. Yes, that's it. Anyway, this does sound a lot like, of course, what we think may have happened with Rhaegar and Lyanna. A secret wedding of a Targaryen prince and a Stark maiden before a Hearttree in the middle of a war that the prince ultimately will not survive. And there's even a dash of Robb Stark thrown in here with the idea that Jace was already betrothed to Baela when he impulsively married someone else, just as Robb was betrothed to a Frey princess, yet impulsively married Jane Westerling anyway. Robb Stark. Oh, Robb. Okay, so is there any truth to this story? We really don't know. Did they marry? Did they sleep together? We don't know. Did Jace get her with child? We just have no idea. And besides being interesting, it really doesn't matter because we never hear anything else about Sarah Snow or a possible child coming of her and Jace's tumble before the old gods, before their porn shrub performance, if you will. But it sure does sound like George is trying to get us, readers, to think of Rhaegar and Lyanna here with the inclusion of this rumor about Sarah Snow and the wedding before the Hearttree. So we have to ask ourselves, why would that be? Why create this parallel? Well, the answer would seem to be that George wants us to think of the Pact of Ice and Fire as an important event in the chain of events that leads to the prince that was promised. The idea of mingling the bloodlines of the wolf and the dragon that Rhaegar and Lyanna would eventually carry out originates here with the Pact of Ice and Fire. So that kind of makes sense. And again, I will say that this would make more sense if Aegon's prophecy of Ice and Fire was discussed at this time as well. After all, it's always seemed likely that Rhaegar sought Lyanna out because he read something in prophecy that made him think a wolf girl was needed to be the mother of the prince that was promised, something like that. So is it possible that Rhaenyra and Jace had something similar in mind? Now, it's obviously true that they needed the Starks as allies in the war, but one way to help them win over the Starks might have been to bring up the prophecy, especially if, as we suspect, the Starks and Targaryens had already made an agreement based on the prophecy years before when Torrhen Stark knelt to Aegon. So, hang on a quick second here. Let me get a swig of this Red Bull. I've had to lock Cleo away for this stream. This jacket is not a bird claw kind of jacket, if you will. So, unfortunately, she's not here. She'll be joining us on Monday, though. All right, so guys, it could be also that the unfulfilled marriage pact between Stark and Targaryen is actually part of what gave Rhaegar the idea to seek out Lyanna, right? Maybe he was like, Stark and Targaryen, wedding pact, ice and fire, Now, I also wonder about the possibility that Sarah Snow and Jaecerys, that this story is actually true. Okay, perhaps Jace was actually a bit like Rhaegar, and maybe we have to ask, did he lie with or wed Sarah Snow because he thought that he was seeing signs that their union was actually the one that was needed to produce the prince that was promised? It's just one of those things that, Fire and Blood doesn't tell us, but there's a lot of Targaryens that try to interpret prophecy. So maybe Jace was sent to Winterfell and, I swear, Mom, I saw a comet. It was nothing to do with her pretty brown hair and eyelashes. Nothing at all. Well, we'll see. So the thing is, again, there's just so much blank space in Fire and Blood, right? So all we can say is that it's possible, but we really just don't know. The exciting thing, though, is that House of the Dragon will be giving us some version of all of these events early on in Season 2. So all these possibilities that are suggested by the text, but, don't have enough evidence to go on, this is essentially the palette that House of the Dragon will be painting with. The colors of the wind that they'll be... Okay, sorry, that metaphor fell apart. But the point is, these are the stories that, Ryan Condal and crew will have a fat pink comic. Okay, all right, chat, settle down. This is what Ryan's got to work with when he decides what version of the story would make for good television. So, given that the show has chosen to play up Targaryen prophecy in general, and Aegon's prophecy in particular, I don't know, it just seems like kind of a no-brainer to use the prophecy as a plot device when Jace goes to Winterfell. Otherwise, it's just going to kind of disappear and never play a part again, even though it was a huge thing in Season 1. In fact, I wonder if it'll, if Helaena, we've seen them play up Helena's prophecies too, so maybe she'll get in on it. Maybe the Ice and Fire prophecy will get passed around on that side as well. But here, this is where it makes the most sense to talk about it, when Jace goes to Winterfell. And like I said, we didn't see Rhaenyra tell Jace about it before he left. But again, that could have happened off camera, here on this show where so much happens off camera. Because remember, as soon as Viserys made Rhaenyra the heir, he took her aside and told her about the prophecy. So, this should have happened at some point when Rhaenyra was sending Jace off. She should have told him about the prophecy. So, if they want to, they very easily can backfill that information, and Jace can just talk about it, be like, yeah, my mom told me about the blah, blah, blah. So, don't know if he'll actually have the knife, but... Oh no, Aegon's got the knife, that little bastard. No, I'm just kidding. Aegon's cool. In fact, I met Tom Glencarney. He was a nice dude. So, yeah. They're all bastards, though. Anyways, I also think House of the Dragon would be wise to look up, and I mean dastardly in that sense. They'd be House of the Dragon. The other thing they're going to do besides playing up the prophecy is look for opportunities to play up the role of the Starks, right? The Starks were a huge part of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, but they really do play a much smaller role in the Dance of the Dragon. So this Pact of Ice and Fire, this is one of the main parts where the Starks come into it. So it just seems like they're going to play this whole thing up a bit. Cregan is a great character. So, he's the kind of person they might give a little more to beef up the role. And of course, Cregan comes in towards the end of the story to play a pretty important role, fighting some of the last battles and then sort of setting things right after he chops a bunch of people's heads off. But that's what needs to happen. So Cregan comes down to King's Landing, Hour of the Wolf. That's probably going to be one of the things the show ends on, Hour of the Wolf. So, yeah, I really think they're going to this is where the Starks are really going to come into the story here with the Pact of Ice and Fire. And I think they're going to play it up. So this would be a section break here. This is where we would go do a little music and the little shift. We're about, how far are we? About 60% of the way through the script. So we're on track for keeping this under an hour. That's very good. Is everyone having a good time here on this Christmas afternoon? Pre-Christmas afternoon. It's Friday. Christmas is Sunday. All right, so what about those dragon's eggs? Here comes the fun part. We got theories, folks. We got theories. Fire and Blood tells us that Mushroom claims that Vermax, Jace's dragon, left a clutch of eggs at Winterfell. Now, the Maesters writing Fire and Blood quickly label that as absurd and far-fetched pish-posh. But maybe not, right? So the idea here is that supposedly Vermax was never known to lay eggs any other time, so he was assumed to be a male dragon, a he-dragon. But of course, there's a pretty large cloud of uncertainty surrounding dragon sex. I mean, we do have the murals and the tapestries, but the point is that dragons might be able to change gender, right? And we don't know what they're male and female, if there even are male and female dragons. It's completely unknown, to be honest. Even Septon Barth doesn't really know. Nobody's ever observed dragon naughty bits or dragon intercourse that's recorded. So what happens is it's by who lays eggs. So really, instead of male and female, we should say egg-laying dragons and non-egg-laying dragons. There does seem to be some dragons, like Dreamfire, and Syrax, that lay clutches of eggs repeatedly. So it is probably the case that there is male and female dragons. There are male and female dragons, but they may also be reproducing asexually. Komodo dragons and other lizards reproduce asexually. So we freaking don't know. There's a cloud of uncertainty, as I said. And so it's really just the idea that whichever ones lay eggs are assumed to be female. Okay, now here's the thing. Vermax was never recorded to lay eggs, except for this idea that maybe he or she laid eggs at Winterfell. But the thing is, Vermax doesn't survive the war. And Vermax is a young dragon. I think Vermax is a cradle egg with Jace, but Vermax definitely isn't older than Jace. So it could be that Vermax just started laying eggs, and that was their first clutch of eggs at Winterfell. And then again, Vermax doesn't survive the war, and that may be it. So really, it's totally inconclusive. We don't know what gender Vermax is. We don't know if dragon gender is even a thing. So you get the point. It's possible that Vermax could have laid eggs. And the idea here, of course, is that the crypts beneath Winterfell are built into natural catacombs. And we know that there are also hot springs in Winterfell. So it could be that there are portions of the crypts that are warmed by that geothermic activity. And we know the lowest levels of the crypts are collapsed. We haven't been down there. So essentially the idea is that Vermax found a little cozy part of the crypts, a warm part, decided, hey, this looks like a primo spot to lay a clutch of dragon eggs, and laid some dragon eggs. So it's even possible, I would guess, that Vermax maybe fell to the magical need, right, that flows from the destiny that the Targaryens and Stark share. The dragons are magical creatures. They might get the idea like, oh, this is, we should lay some eggs here. Winterfell, it's important. I mean, the dragon eggs send dragon dreams to Dany, which we're going to talk about in a second. So the dragons, we don't know how intelligent or psychically aware they could be. They could be very smart indeed. So hang on a second. Cleo is having a hard time, so I'm just going to turn the light all the way off in there. See if that helps. Alrighty. 1 second. Now here's the thing, guys. You know what's actually more likely than Vermax laying eggs at Winterfell is that Rhaenyra may have sent a dragon's egg or eggs with Jace as a way of sealing this marriage pact, right? So Rhaenyra and Jace are pledging to marry Jace's firstborn daughter to Cregan's son. That daughter's will be a dragon rider. So sending the egg is kind of like a promise, saying, yeah, when she's born, she's going to come and we're going to foster her here too, and that's going to be her egg. In addition to that, Cregan's son, Rickon, who would have married Jace's daughter, well, their child would have been a dragon rider too. And so an egg or eggs that Rhaenyra sent could have been for them as well. So there's a couple of reasons why Rhaenyra might send dragon's eggs along with Jace as a promise, because they don't have a child. They're promising a child that doesn't exist. So the dragon's egg is a way to show that they're serious, a way to show that, yeah, you Starks are really being brought into the house of Targaryen, dragons and all, right? And the Pact of Ice and Fire may have called for the Targaryens to come to send a dragon keeper to Winterfell to help raise and train the dragon, right? That may have been part of the agreement as well. So again, this is all stuff we could see on season 2. That's the exciting part here. So not only does this make sense for all the reasons I just said, if Rhaenyra and Jace are thinking about the, Aegon's dream, the prince that was promised, and the idea that this union of Stark and Targaryen may lead to the prince that was promised, either, the son of Rickon and Jace's daughter, or perhaps down the line, well, then you'd want that child to have a dragon if they're going to be the prince that was promised, right? You might even send, 3 eggs in case you get 3 Stark Targaryen kids. There's a prophecy about that somewhere. How many dragon's eggs can you carry in a knapsack while riding on the back of a smallish dragon? Can 2 coconuts carry a swallow on a line if it's held under their dorsal guided feathers? These are the questions that we want to know. Yeah, so, guys, we're left with essentially 2 fun possibilities and 1 very boring one. Okay, so maybe none of this is true. Maybe it's just a marriage pact. There's no Sarah Snow romance, no dragon's eggs, no discussion of prophecy. Now, maybe that's what happened. Maybe Ice and Fire is secretly very boring. But the other 2 possibilities are, of course, that Rhaenyra sent Jace to Winterfell with dragon's eggs to seal the pact, or that Vermax somehow sensed the moment and plunked down some dragon's eggs in the crypts for Jon to find one day. Dun, dun, dun. Because of, guys, if those eggs exist, whether they were laid by Vermax or not, they absolutely will be down in the crypts, and they will be found by Jon, right? I mean, isn't that the obvious payoff here? We're all expecting some sort of proof or evidence of Jon's Targaryen lineage to be stashed down there in the crypts. Maybe in Lyanna's tomb, maybe in the lowest levels of the crypts that it seems like Jon's dream is calling him to. One of those 2 things. So what exactly is it that's calling Jon onward in his recurring crypts dream? Something is calling him down to the lowest levels. Now, when Jon tells Sam about his recurring dream, he says, "Somehow I know I have to go down there, but I don't want to. I don't want it. I'm afraid of what might be waiting for me. The old kings of winter are down there, sitting on their thrones with stone wolves at their feet and iron swords across their laps. But it's not them I'm afraid of. I scream that I'm not a Stark. This isn't my place. But it's no good. I have to go anyway." So there's something else down there besides the kings of winter. Something terrifying that Jon has to confront. Is that the thing compelling Jon to go down into the crypts? I mean, notice that Jon protests against the kings of winter, right? He says, "I'm not a Stark." But then he also notes that it actually isn't the Stark kings that he has to confront. It's something else, something further down, something that doesn't have to do with his Stark heritage. The kings of winter represent his Stark heritage. There's something else down there. So now consider the 2 dragon dreams that Daenerys has in a Game of Thrones. She has 2. before her dragon's eggs hatch. That's the important thing. Dany's eggs have actually petrified, in fact. They've turned to stone, and it seems that they come from Alyssa Farman's theft of dragon's eggs from Dragonstone, which took place over 200 years, almost 250, before Dany hatched them. It actually is right about 250. Excuse me, 250. So even though they're 250 years old and turned to stone, the dragon spirits inside of her eggs are still able to reach out and call to Dany before they are even born into the physical world, okay? Right? If you remember, Dany feels the eggs reaching out to her baby in her womb. And then more importantly, she has 2 dreams of Drogon before the eggs hatch. And in the second dream, Drogon is incinerating her and transforming her with fire. Then in the first dream, she's terrified of the dragon, just like Jon is terrified of whatever is down in the lowest levels of the crypts. But after she has her second dragon dream, she faces it, her fear is burned away, and she has that transformational experience. And the next day is when she wakes up stronger and begins to own her Dothraki experience. She turns around the power dynamic with Drogo. She learns to ride, all that stuff. So the dragon's eggs gave Dany dragon dreams before they were born. So, is it possible that 170-year-old dragon's eggs down in the Winterfell crypts are actually reaching out to Jon, the only Targaryen within reach, and calling him to come down and find them? The answer is yes. According to the mechanics of what we're given, absolutely that could be what's happening. And this would be an amazing payoff, if you think about it, for the Pact of Ice and Fire. So not only would the very idea of a Stark Targaryen union have been set up by the Pact, the child born of that eventual union, Jon Stargaryen, let's call him, shout out to Ghost here, would be claiming a heritage of dragon's eggs that was left for him by that very same Pact of Ice and Fire. Okay. Then Jon and Dany would have great stories to swap and unique experiences that only they share. Perfect small talk for a first date, if you ask me, right? Now, of course, there isn't time, hold your comments, there isn't time, of course, for the dragon's eggs, new dragon's eggs, to hatch and then grow dragons that are large enough to fight the others. That's true. However, with all Melisandre's talk of Azor Ahai Reborn waking a stone dragon, which she got from ancient prophecy, of course, and with all the evidence pointing to Jon as one manifestation of Azor Ahai Reborn, of course, the other one is Dany, and she's already wakened dragons from stone, or awoken, whatever it is. So we should be looking for Jon to do something that qualifies as waking dragons from stone. Now, that might mean something less literal than hatching dragon's eggs, but it could mean that. And it's even possible that young dragons could have a more magical purpose besides fighting the others. Some sort of magical ritual, sacrifice, ceremony, something like that. And I think it's maybe even more likely that the eggs won't hatch and that they will just play a role as dragon's eggs. Again, it might be a magical purpose, some sort of ritual. There's a thing called Dragon Bomb Theory, which we'll talk about on Monday a little bit. It has to do with Hardhome and Summerhall. And the idea that dragon's eggs could be explosive if you do the wrong thing with them. So it could be that dragon's eggs will be used in some crazy magical ritual to, achieve something wild, something to do with resurrecting someone, freeing Jon's body from bondage of the others, or defeating the others, chasing away the darkness of the long night even. I mean, dragon's eggs are very powerful, so they could be used in some sort of ritual. Then there could be a purpose besides just hatching dragons. And of course, at the very least, dragon's eggs and the dreams that they would give Jon, because of course, eventually when he finishes this dream, he'll see a dragon, right? That's the point. He'll get to the lowest levels of the crypts in a dream and see some sort of dragon in his dream, just like Dany saw Drogon. Perhaps. Maybe it'll be Rhaegar strumming his ghost harp, but could be a dragon dream at the end of it. Yeah, dragon bomb to break the wall. Who knows? Again, on Monday, I'll entertain all kinds of wild, mad theories about that. So it could be that simply their role will be to awaken Jon's inner dragon, and that's an important enough thing by itself. And that the dragon's eggs, then once they find him, they'll pull him out and use that as evidence for Jon's lineage or whatever. It could just be about revealing Jon's lineage to himself, though, and not even convincing a bunch of other people that he's a Targaryen. We don't know how the story's going to go. Now, one other possibility is for the very end of the story. I'm somebody that predicts a no magic ending, where there'll be no White Walkers and no living dragons at the end, but maybe like some hint that magic will come back one day. So dragon's eggs would be a nice way to do that. Maybe a sparkling comet in the sky. Dragon's eggs would do that. It would serve the narrative purpose of saying, hey, the door isn't totally shut on magic in this world. Because that's kind of sad if all the magic is gone. So maybe it's like, because Bran's going to download the Weirwood Net, and I think he'll be the last Green Seer. So there'll be no more humans hooking up to the Weirwood Net either. I really do think we're heading towards a no magic ending. So the dragon's eggs could be the little silver lining to that. Yeah. Now, so guys, I know this has been mostly an exercise in speculation, but the blank spaces in this story here, both with the Pact of Ice and Fire and the Rhaegar and Lyanna story, George has filled them with exciting rumors, okay? And this is fantasy. So there should be some sort of exciting payoff here, some sort of revelation. It may be a twist on these rumors, but I'd be surprised if there was nothing to any of this. So we'll have to see. Like I said, I hope you've been entertained by this, and I think we'll all be entertained on season 2 when Jace goes to Winterfell. I think we're going to see some stuff. We'll hear the talk about maybe it'll be a huge letdown, and I'll just be on the stream very sad. I'll be like, oh, they didn't do any of my theories. It'll be Game of Thrones season 8 and the spirals all over again. Who knows? But I just figured I'd give you these exciting ideas. And also, this applies to the book as well. We don't know what George is doing with all of this stuff and the Rhaegar reveal. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. Looking forward to seeing how this shakes out. And, of course, in the Winds of Winter, when George finishes that, which he will, we have confidence in George making progress. We'll eventually see Jon finish that crypt stream. And perhaps then we'll get an answer to one of the most exciting mysteries in all of A Song of Ice and Fire, which is what is hiding in the lowest levels of the Winterfell crypts. So there's a lot more to discuss with Jon, RLJ, the crypts, Azor Ahai, dragons. So please, again, join me the day after Christmas. This will be this Monday, same time, 3 p.m. Pacific time. And we'll go through all kinds of stuff. I'll see if Grey Waste Tim is around. I don't know if he'll be able to stay away from a stream like this. But yeah, so if anybody has any quick questions, I'll try to take them real quick. But like I said, I want to save most of the discussion for Monday. But you guys, appreciate you coming here. And if you've waited till the end of the stream and you have a question, I will take it real quick. Baptiste DeVille says, thanks for your passion. You really specialize in what I find to be the most exciting parts and mysteries of A Song of Ice and Fire. Greetings from France. We come from France. Shout out Coneheads. All right. That's awesome. Yeah. This is, I definitely go for the magic and the prophecy and the symbolism, but I think as my career has gone on, I've learned to better integrate that with the storytelling human elements as well. And at this point, we've got a nice synthesis of analysis going on. Yeah. What have you done to your cone? Coneheads is good stuff. Happy Yule, says Lady Lils. What do you think about Jon and Dany fulfilling the Pact of Ice and Fire? A Targaryen princess weds a Snow of her own. I've always loved the strong Jon and Dany parallels to both Rhaegar and Lyanna and each other. Yeah, we probably should do a whole stream to speculate about how the Jon and Dany relationship is going to go. I've got a lot of ideas about how it could go. I really think it'll be a romantic kind of thing where like they're going on a doomed mission to save the world together, and that'll be their romance. So I don't know if they're like gonna get married, but maybe they will. Maybe they will say their vows before a heart tree before their mission, just for the two of them. I do think the romance will be something that we will feel a little more than what we saw on the show. Unfortunately, Emilia and Kit were like friends for 10 years before they finally got to do their romance scenes, and just didn't really happen. But that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be worth the wait in the story. So, I would like all this to, like I said, I hope all this pays off. I hope we get to find out, what the story is at the Tower of Joy and what Rhaegar's thoughts on prophecy were. I would love it if his ghost could appear to Jon, or even Lyanna's ghost, because I think Lyanna would know everything about what Rhaegar was up to. Grace says, I don't have a question. I just want to say your hair looks sexy. Hey, bonus points. That's that. Like I said, that's how you get to my heart here. I'm getting there. I'm coming for you, Fabian Franco. I'm coming for you. Paul Breedy says 420. Praise Garth. Show's biggest failure was rushed Jon Dany romance. Yeah, Kelly Johnson, it was a big failure. Yeah, in the books, you can see more strongly the literary parallels between Jon and Dany. And maybe that would make a good video that I should do. You can see it building. And the main thing I always talk about is how they have shared values. They're the two revolutionary figures in the story. Dany's trying to overturn the slave trade. Jon sees through the racism against the wildlings and tries to reintegrate the wildlings to Westeros. That's a revolutionary act for which he is killed. And so that's definitely written that way on purpose. So I think that these are the two most empathetic and, again, revolutionary characters, the ones who stand in the breach and lay their lives on the line for others. Brienne does that too, or there's other characters. But I think this will give Jon and Dany, shared values, and that's going to form the backbone of their relationship and their connection, even more than, blood heritage, Because if it was just that wouldn't be enough. Have a blessed Yule. Well, you as well, Kate Harley. Thank you. And hang on a second here. Had a squisher in my throat. Goddamn squishers got in my throat. Get out of there, squishers. Don't know how that happened. No idea. No idea. Uncle Nimble Dick has no idea how the squishers got down in my throat. None at all. All right. Squisher maids are so lovely. All right, guys. Fingers crossed for a Jon and Dany video about their parallels. Yeah, the more I think about it, that's I should do that. I've done so much in A Song of Ice and Fire. So anytime I find an idea I'm excited about finding an idea that I'm excited about. So yeah, I'll get to work on that. That's a good idea. Glad we had it together. That's good. That's our idea baby that was conceived here. Yeah. So all right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and call it. I have not done another 1899 stream. I will have announcements, and I'm going to cover 1899 a lot. I'm going to launch a whole nother channel for other media. I'll have announcements coming about that soon, so just stay tuned. Hey, David, I believe at the end, Westeros will be rid of kings and queens and move towards a democracy, Ziblock says. Yeah, I think that's very possible. I think the whole point of Bran downloading the Weirwood Net is that him and Sam are gonna write all that shit down and give Westeros a written history. And I think Bran will be the last king. He's not gonna have any children, and I think they will start to decentralize power. I do think that George is interested in writing about that, actually. So I'm looking for that in a dream of democracy. We should call that book. Yeah. All right, guys, you have a great Christmas. And I will see you again on Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Cheers, everyone. Jingling.